Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Google Developers Space channel. Thank you for tuning in to our live stream tonight. Today we are having another episode of Kopi. I'm Lawrence from Google Developer Relations team, looking after our developer and startup community in the Southeast Asia region. So please leave a comment in the live chat section, and then let us know where you are tuning from, or simply just say hello. While we are waiting for more people to join, today, there's actually a good news going around. So if you're living in Singapore, you can go outdoors without your mask now. Yeah, but it's only applicable for outdoors, right? We still need to wear our mask indoor. Yeah, for health and wear a mask if you're unwell. Yeah. So now let's begin the session. Yeah. So let me briefly introduce who we are and what we do. So Google Developers Space is a home for developers and startup from around the region. Okay, it's a home for developers and startup from around the region to learn, connect, engage, and be inspired. We want to empower and connect the community to our people, programs, network, and technologies. So for Lakopi at Developer Space is a monthly event for the developer community to learn, connect, and be inspired by each other. So every month a tech team is selected, and developer will submit their topics that they want to share with the community. So if you're interested, please let us know, and we will post the tech team on our social media channels, and you can reach out to us if you like to share your projects. So please follow our social media channel to get the latest updates. Yep, and this month the theme is Flutter, and we are glad to have Angga tonight. Let me bring him up on stage. Hi, Angga.
Hi, Lawrence. How are you?
Yeah, thank you for joining us tonight. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So let me do a short introduction about Angga first. So Angga is one of the Google developer experts for Flutter, and he's also the CTO and co-founder of Bicarakan.id. Yeah, so it's a platform that provides online counseling services, and their mission is to create an ecosystem of quality mental health service for everyone in Indonesia at an affordable cost. Yeah, I personally feel that everyone should take good care of our mental health. Yeah. So I'm curious, Anga, like what inspired you to start this company?
Yeah, interesting one, right? So basically, all my life, all my career was spent in tech only and tech related, and then I didn't know about these things, right? Like mental health, and then psychology, and then everything that revolves around that. But I think it's like super important because a lot of people are actually going through hard times, especially in this pandemic, because of their mental health, because they are not seeing anyone. There are no in-person events, so on and so forth. So people are having a hard time in general, right? And then I think a lot of people are actually needing this kind of services to be able to talk it out loud to a professional counselors, professional people who are actually who can like listen to their problems amid of this pandemic, and then give probably give solution to them. So I think it's like a life changing experience, definitely for me to actually start this company. Noting that I didn't know about any of this like prior to creating the company itself.
Yeah, I think it's actually a very important area, for us to take note. I think sometimes we forget to take care of our mental health. Yeah. So
Exactly.
like audience, if let's say you want to find out more about the company, I'm gonna paste the website on onto the comment section, and we can actually find out more over there.
Yes.
Yep.
So yeah,
Hmm.
basically, probably a bit of advertisement, right? So people probably in like this SCA region, probably in Singapore, Malaysia, or Indonesia, if you need someone to talk, about your problems, some professionals, please go check out Bicarakan.id, and then we will try to like provide the help that you need. Our counselors also like speaks English quite fluently actually. So yeah, go check it out, our website. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Everyone must check it out. Check out the company, right? So, yeah. So now let's come back to tonight's topic on render objects. So, it's something very important in Flutter. This is what Anga have told me previously, and yeah. So remember to post your questions in the comment section. So, and then we will address them after the presentation. Yeah. So yes, so now we can actually move the presentation. And then Anga, so you may start your presentation.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. Okay, so good night, everyone. Probably in like the sea region, right? Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, or other country around that. So tonight I'm going to talk about a render object in Flutter, one of the most, I think, hot topics that we Flutter developer talks about, especially on the fundamental side of things. Probably not really practical, but yeah, we'll see in this presentation. So my name is Angga Dwi Arifandi, but you can call me Angga. I'm a CTO at Bicarakan.id, which is the company that we just talked about. And then I'm also Google Developer Expert in Flutter for Indonesia. And then below on the text, you can see Black Mentor is my GitHub link. You can go check it out. Usually, all of my presentations has like some sort of like practical code inside of it, so you can check out the GitHub for those code. And then below is my Medium page. I rarely write, especially probably a year back or two. But yeah, I also still have some writings about Flutter as well. And then mobile development in general, I think it's still there as well. And then there's my Twitter handle. And then if you have any question, when you didn't have a chance to actually say it in this session, you can actually email me at that email. I think I will share like the link to this presentation to Lawrence after this, so you can actually see the presentation after the session. Okay, so most of you, I assume, would be probably like a mid to like probably senior level to Flutter at this point, right? Because the topic that we're going to talk about tonight is a bit advanced, I can say. But yeah, we'll still go through like short intro to Flutter in case there's some of you who doesn't know like what Flutter is, what Flutter can do, what is pros and cons and everything. So basically, Flutter is a framework that lets us build a lot of applications for a lot of platforms. Right now, we have six platforms: Android, iOS, and then macOS, Windows, Linux, and then web. So we have six with only one code base. So basically, the idea of Flutter is we have to be able to create a lot of products, good products, beneficial products for humanity, with only like less or probably like very very efficient amount of effort, right? So we only have to learn one language, one framework, which is Flutter, and then basically write the UI and then everything in one code base. Then we can deploy to those six platforms. So that's basically the idea of Flutter. So right now, Flutter is already on its, I think, 2.5 year from its first release back in 2018. There's a lot of improvements, a lot of changes for the better, definitely. Previously, we didn't have any other platform like web, desktop, and then mobile is a bit janky as well. And then there's a lot of bugs. But right now, it's much, much better. So a lot of people are already using Flutter for like their professional projects. Okay, so back into the topic. We are going to talk about daily life of Flutter developer. Probably you will be quite familiar with this. So this is I take an example of a regular Flutter app or probably mobile app in general, right? It's like a very simple app. There's text, there's an image, there's a app bar right here where you can search things, and then there's a button, there's a tab on the bottom. Basically, this is probably like a general app that you can find on the stores. You can download it, you can actually use it. And then yeah, this is mostly what we do. This is what I do for a living, right? So I basically put a text beside a button and then beside a image, and then I told the button, for example, what it should do when it's being clicked, or probably like what image should I show when a user is logged in with an account or something like that, right? So this is a basic app that we like. Probably I can say that 95% of developers do in the daily life as a Flutter developer. So there are a lot of layers in Flutter. Uh, there are framework layers, which is written in Dart. There are engine layers, which is if you ever heard about Skia or Sky Engine, this is the layer. And then there are also like platform specific layer, which differs based on the platform. For example, desktop, web, and then mobile is like each of them are different, right? So most of us will only touch the top layer, which is the material and Cupertino layer. This one is like the more of the platform specific layer. We usually like write material button or material text or material image, for example, or material switch, right? And then there's also widgets, which the components that we use in the UI, but doesn't belong to the both material or Cupertino. This being, for example, container, which is basically like platform agnostic. So it doesn't know if it's material or Cupertino one. And then there's another layer on the bottom of it, which is rendering. So most of our life as a Flutter developer only revolves around those two top layers, which is material Cupertino and then widgets, because we interact with it a lot. We have to learn about it. We have to learn about like what is material widgets, what is the Cupertino widgets, what is the other widgets that doesn't belong to the material and Cupertino widgets that we can use to build the app, something like this, right? So basically a lot of components that are being written right here uh, will be found on material, Cupertino, and the widgets layer. So we're all set on that, right? We don't need, most of the time we don't need to touch the layers below, like rendering, animation, painting, gestures, foundation, and everything below that. So yeah, basically the rendering, animation, painting, gestures, we rarely interact with them. But actually, these two layers are like super important for our life as a Flutter developer. Why? Because hopefully, I can say that probably like 95% of our use case will be covered on those two top layers. But there are some cases, especially if you're writing some, for example, very advanced feature of the app, or probably your functionality of the app doesn't ever being implemented by someone else before, or the Flutter team, or probably just your use case is very unique that Flutter team decides to, we don't think that this is worth investing our time in writing the widgets for it and then everything, right? So there are this is like very important as well, although we didn't like get to actually like interact frequently with those layers. So what are those layers, right? Rendering. So up next, we'll talk about rendering in Flutter, the layer below the widgets. So what actually happened when rendering in Flutter happens? How are Flutter widgets being rendered, right? So first, we go through this quote, I can say. It's actually written on the Flutter source code. It says a widget is an immutable description of part of a user interface. So what does this mean? So this means that a widget is immutable, which means in a human language, right? It cannot be changed at all. So let's say we have widget A, and then after that we want to change that widget. Let's say previously it's a text widget that says A, for example. Then we want to change it to B. So it needs to be actually changed. The previous widget needs to be destroyed and then be substituted with a new, brand new widget. So it cannot be like changed anyhow, the widget. So that is a very important aspect of Flutter rendering on how it works. So next is on how Flutter widgets are being rendered, we basically have three elements on Flutter renderer or rendering engine, right? First is the widget. This is actually like the probably like the topmost layer that we just talked about, right? We frequently interact with this. We create widgets. We create custom widgets. We customize like the old widgets that are already there on the Flutter framework. Then everything, right? So those widgets we frequently interacted with. There are actually like an element or probably layer below that widget which called element. So the widget holds a config for the piece of the UI. So this is actually, we can say it's like the blueprint of the widget or for the component, right? For example, what kind of component are we trying to draw in the screen, right? For example, it's a text or probably a button or an image, for example. Then after that, it will call or probably it will attach, we can say, an element. An element is like a manager that actually like manages which component that needs to be redrawn, for example, or probably which element needs to be adjusted for because we have like a lot of elements in one app, right? For example, we have probably like 50 or more elements inside one screen of the app. So this element part will be managing those components so that it will stick on top of one another. And then after that, we have like the most bottom layer, which is called the render object. So the element will call and then attach a render object, which will actually like draw the painting, if we can say like that, right? The painting that will be drawn on the canvas itself or on the phone screen that we have right here. So we have three layers. First is the widget. Widget is like the blueprint of what will be drawn in the screen. Then after that, the widget will create an element and then attach it to the element tree, which will manage what kind of element that we will uh, draw on the screen. And then we have the actual worker, which is the render object. So this render object will actually like draw things. For example, if you want to draw a line or probably a circle or probably a triangle or an image, and then everything will be drawn directly by the render object. So we have those three. So this is the actual steps on the code, right? Previously, it's just like a concept. So for example, when we actually run a Flutter app, we call this run app method. So what it will do first is it will attach the widget, which is the my app widget, right? This is like the topmost widget that we have in the tree. It will try to attach the widget to the widget tree. And then after that, that widget tree will call attach to render tree, which is the element. You can see it right here on the right hand side. Render object to widget element, which is the element that I just talked about previously. So from widget, we go to element. It will attach itself to the element tree. And then after that, the element will call this function called mount. Mount is like I said previously, right? The element will manage what will be drawn on the screen and then what not. So this mount will create a render object, which will be like the drawer, the actual drawer for the screen. Then after that, it will attach it to the render object tree. So in the end, we will have three. Uh, we will have three, which is the widget tree, element tree, and then after that the render object tree. So in the end, we will have like three. So after that, the render object will actually paint the actual widget in the canvas. For example, if we're drawing or attaching text, for example, it will draw the alphabet, right? A, B, C, or anything that we supply on the widget. Or if it's for example an image, it will start to render the image from the sky engine below on the layer. So that is basically in a nutshell how it works for the rendering. So we can see this is like the real life example. So this is a very, very simple app. We have a material app, we have scaffold, column, and then after that we have two widgets, only two widgets, very, very simple. Text A, and then a button called click me, right? So how it would work if we add more widget or more element into the screen, right? For example, we will add one more text B right here. So first, Flutter will add the widget text with the properties. For example, the properties right here is like the alphabet B. And then after that, Flutter will create the multi-child render object element. There's like a lot of types of element. This multi-child render object is only like one of them. And then after that, it will attach those element into the element tree. So that's the second step. Then after that, the element will call mount function on the element class. And then after that, it will create the render object and attach it to the render object tree. So that's step 3. And then step 4 is render object will paint to canvas. So you can see here that render object is actually the one that is doing things, right? Like drawing everything on the screen. Other elements only like manages or be like a blueprint, some kind of blueprint for the render object to understand, okay, what do I need to draw on the screen. So that's very important concept. So what happened when a widget is changed or substitute? Previously, we saw if we add one widget, what will happen. So in case of like substituting or probably like changing one widget to another, what would happen? For example, previously there's this text A on the top. What will happen if we change it to text B? So we change the parameter or blueprint of the widget, right? What would happen is first, Flutter will add widget text with the new properties. So like I said previously, widget is immutable. So the widget with text A will be deleted and then destroyed completely, right? That's the first step. Then the second step is Flutter will create a multi render object element and then attach it to element 3, then called mount and then paint to the canvas. But the question is, do Flutter needs to do all of those things right from the beginning, right? And the answer is no, because Flutter has this method called can_update. So this is where the magic begins, right? On the element layer, Flutter will know which element can be reused, actually be reused, and not be redrawn and then recreated completely from the beginning. And then function definition is something like this. So first we look at the runtime type. So for example, if we destroy a text and then we want to create a new text, Flutter will take a look and then, hey, do we have any text remaining that we can actually reuse for that text, for that new text component, right? If it is, then yes, we can reuse that one. Or second, is there like every widget inside Flutter can have a key, either be like a global key or like local key or just a simple general key, right? Is there any widget with that key that can be reused? If yes, Flutter will try to reuse that widget, that element actually. Flutter will try to reuse that element and then change its properties, so it doesn't have to do everything from the beginning. So this is basically a performance boost for the Flutter rendering engine. So it doesn't have to do like all the steps needed to create the element and then create the render object from the beginning and then do everything from the beginning, like all over again. So that's like very, very important concept as well. That's why when we can, we should add like a key to our widget so that Flutter can be helped, quote unquote, to actually remembers what can be reused and what not. So you can see here, this is like the actual example. You can see the text A on the top. Its render object ID is 15 FCC, and then on the button we change the text to B, so the parameter is changed, and then the render object is still the same, 15 CC. So everything doesn't need to be recreated from the beginning. So recapping from the first slide, so basically there are three building blocks to Flutter: the widget, element, and the render object. Widget will act as the blueprint or abstraction layer, and then the element will act as like a manager that manages which widget to be, or which element or which component that needs to be redrawn, which component that needs to be destroyed, which component that needs to be actually recreated from zero. And then the render object is the worker, the actual worker that will do all the drawing. Basically, this is like the actual like painter, and then that touches all the canvas inside the Flutter. So that's a very very important concept, I think, for a Flutter developer to understand. So next, we will talk about render object, which is like the our worker layer, right? So the question is, when do I need to work on the render object? When do I need to use it? So the answer is, first, most of the time you won't, and this is a good news for us, right? All of our, like I said previously, probably 90 to 95% of our use cases will be covered only by the widget layer. So we doesn't even need to like take a look at the elements at all, right? If our use case is like pretty basic, like the first app that I showed you. What if it doesn't, right? What if I need to draw a custom widget? For example, I draw like a very simple smiley inside a circle on the right. You can actually use a widget that can draw flexibly, and then you can draw basically anything inside this, which is called the custom painter. You can, for example, draw a triangle, draw a star, draw a hexagonal, everything that doesn't exist in Flutter widget catalog. You can actually like draw something in here. But let's say it doesn't fit your need as well. So that's when. So all if all the known widgets, all the widget in the widgets catalog doesn't fit your needs, and then custom painter won't do your needs as well. Then after that, you can actually go to create your own widget with render object. You can go create your own widget with the drawer of the Flutter framework itself. So what are the use cases? What are the simple use cases of using render object in, for example, my day-to-day life as a Flutter developer, right? So the first one is the getting position of the drawn widget. So for example, we want to draw, we want to create like a tutorial coach mark or something like this on the middle, right? Or probably on the far right, you can actually see a box and then a text with with a row like pointing to the far right of the widget, or of the from the component, right? So with this, you can actually use how render box or render object works in Flutter and then utilize it. So how to do this? First step is you can add like a global key. I name it text a key, for example, for this text on the far right. Then after that, I attach that key to the actual text widget and then actually use it, so that it can act as like an identifier for the widget itself. So the Flutter widget will know, oh, okay, I want to find this widget text A, for example, and then I can get a lot of information only by attaching that global key to that widget. So one information that we need right here is like the position of like dx and dy, right? What is exactly the position of this widget inside the screen? You can use the key. For example, key is a global key, and then you can call a function called current context, and then find the render object, which will actually try to find the render object for you, and then the coordinates of it, right? What is the x of it, and then what is the y for it, and then after that, those x and y's, you can actually use it to draw the tutorial, like the screen on the middle. You can, for example, highlight it. You can, for example, try to point it with a row or something, or an, like a tutorial element or something like that. So you can actually use render object principles in this use case. And then this is, I think a lot of Flutter developer actually does this in their day-to-day life, because yeah, it's like our needs, I think. And then the second use case is creating our own custom-made widget. For example, we can see like two image right here. This is a Flutter app example. So first we have like a fancy slider, the one that Flutter doesn't ever supply to any of us, like out of the box, right? That's the first one. And then the second one is the clock. like a fancy clock and then thermometer. So probably we can actually use like some of the Flutter widgets for this, but we can also, if some of the widgets doesn't fit our need, we can actually like draw the clock and then thermometer ourselves. So how to do this? I create a very simple example about drawing an heart shape widget with render object. So how to do this? First is we need to create. Let me see if there's code. Yeah. So first we have to create like the widget itself. This is the custom widget. We have a class called leaf render object widget. This is just like one type of the render object widget. You can actually see there's a lot more type of widget for this kind of custom render object widget. And then after that, we will need to override the create render object, which will returns like the render object or class that we will actually define, like what will be actually drawn on the canvas right here. Then after that, if there's any parameter or variables inside this widget, you can actually supply it on update render object. Then after update render object will actually like redraw the actual thing from the beginning, right? For example, if I change the heart color from blue to red, it will actually need to redraw right from the beginning. So this is actually the render object class. So you have the mutable variables if there's any on your custom made widgets. And then when you change something, for example, if you change the color of the widget, so it will need to like redraw, right? You will need to call mark needs pay, which will actually tell the framework to redraw the thing from the beginning. And then this is actually like the painter itself. So we have a method called paint. So in the paint, we will get like the size of the parent. Let's say if I put it inside like a text box,
Okay, I'm so sorry. I think Angga is facing some technical issue. So maybe we'll give him some time, right? To get back online. Hi, Angga. Hi, Angga. Are you able to hear me? No problem. Yeah. So I think he's having some technical issue. Just give him some time. He will be log back in, and then he will continue. From where he actually left. Okay. So in the meantime, right? So just want to share with you guys. If let's say you like the session, you can actually scan a QR code and give us your feedback. Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Hmm.
there's some technical difficulties. Yeah,
No problem. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. So I think you can continue with your presentation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just a little bit.
No
Okay.
problem.
So last topic would be like pros and cons of using the render object. I already said in my previous slides that if you can like avoid the render objects, if you can actually use like the template widgets that is being provided from the Flutter team to you, you definitely should try that first. But this is like the pros and cons of using the render object. So first is it's like very flexible for your needs, like I just explained previously, right? You can basically like draw anything, a circle or any other shape that you want that probably are impossible to be drawn using like template widget. You can actually do it with the render object. And the second one is it will sharpen your knowledge and fundamentals in Flutter, as you'll be learning a lot of code from the actual like Flutter frameworks code. So you will be a better Flutter developer, I think, once you actually get your hands on the Flutter's render object. And then the cons, first, the learning curve is quite steep, so it will be quite hard to understand at the beginning. especially with all of those code on the framework code itself. It's quite complicated. And then the second one is you will need a lot of work to actually draw the canvas. For example, if you just want to draw a square, for example, it will be much easier if you will just use a template widget. For example, a size box or a container, you can just use that out of the box, and that will be much easier. And then the last one is it needs time and practice to actually understand how render object works, how can we utilize it, and then how to actually code the render object, how to draw things on the canvas, and then everything. Okay, so this is the resources. I will try to share the slide after this with Lawrence so that you guys can actually see the content of the slide and then see the resources as well. So that's all from my end. If you guys have any question, feel free to ask. I'm also like learning a lot of things like here and there, right? So yeah, probably would be better if this will go as like some sort of discussion for us Flutter developers. Thank you and good night.
Cool, great. Yeah, so thank you so much for the explanation.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I guess it's actually gonna help a lot of developers. Yeah, especially Flutter. I think more and more developers are they are using Flutter right now. Yeah.
yeah,
So we actually have some questions. Some of the audience actually submitted their questions when they register for the event. Yeah. So maybe we can take a look at those questions. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Sure.
we'll go through one by one, and then maybe you can give us your thoughts on this. Yeah. So,
Okay.
do I need to learn about a render object for my day-to-day life as a Flutter developer?
Yeah, I can say that it will be great, especially if you're like a mid to senior Flutter developer to actually try get your hands on the render objects. Why? Because I experienced this like myself on my day-to-day work. When it becomes harder in your work life, you would need at least to understand like how Flutter rendering works, like the fundamentals of the Flutter itself. When let's say your boss or probably like your product manager if you're a developer, right, told you that you will need to draw a very custom widget that is that you never even saw in any other app before, right, and then it will be hard if you don't understand how render object works. At least you can grasp like the basic of it. Then after that, yeah, you will gain like experience from it, and then you can actually tackle anything basically, any widgets, any elements that you would need to draw.
Okay, great. Then we have actually a few questions on render object.
Yeah,
So, the next one will be actually, are there any real-life examples on usage of render objects?
yeah, this is a good question, right? So real life example of render objects would be the first one. I think there's actually like a Flutter clock challenge last year. So we would need to do creative things, draw creative UIs, creative components on the screen for that Flutter clock challenge. So that a lot of Flutter developers actually use render objects on that one because
Mm.
we would need to be creative. Let's say if we only use like the template widgets that Flutter has provided us, then our submission, our app will be same with any other person that submits to that, right? So this is the first one, and the second one, I think I faced actually a lot of issues on drawing rich text editors. That's the first one, and then after that, also when I try to draw some very fancy animation, that is definitely like very hard to draw with only template widgets provided by the Flutter team. So that's two real life examples.
Okay. So the next one also render object. So any tips on how to learn how to use render objects?
Yeah. So on how to learn and then how to use render objects is it can be scary at the beginning. Probably on my slide, you see like a lot of different things at once. Probably you feel like overwhelmed with the information, but try to start with like the very simplest thing. For example, like mine, I try to only draw like a heart shape, right? Very simple, or probably like a circle shape on your screen using render objects, and then go step by step. So go a bit harder, bit by bit. For example, Previously, you only like draw very simple shapes, and then after that, you go to a more complex shape after that, and then after that, you go to a more probably different use case like images, then text, and then cursors, for example, and then yeah, everything that is more complex. So yeah, go step by step.
Okay. Yeah. So we have two more questions. So the next one will be this example dealing with native code through platform channel in Flutter. Do you have any
Okay.
example to share?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we have a lot of difficulties actually at the beginning of the like Flutter 1.0 when dealing with notifications, because basically Flutter team doesn't have any like public library or public APIs that we can actually use to deal with notifications. So we have to write our own code from native Android and iOS to the platform channel in Flutter. So that is yeah, the a good example, and then I think a lot of people will still face like such challenge these days.
Okay. So one last question. I think this is a bit broad based. Yeah, maybe not render object. So what features of Flutter do you think is the most useful and that will help us with our work?
Yeah, I think how Flutter is like very flexible. How we can actually like, for example, this render object is actually like low level part of the Flutter framework, right? Usually, like most of us doesn't even need to touch these things,
Mm-hmm.
but Flutter makes it so flexible that we can actually like change how the framework works, how it can fit our needs, and then how it will be like very easy to actually like draw a very unique app that we didn't even imagine before. So yeah, that's a very big feature from Flutter.
Okay, cool. I think that's all the questions that we have. Yeah, and then yeah, so I think maybe that's the end of the session. Yeah. So thank you so much, Angga, for sharing with us what is render object about, and what is the use and their pro and cons. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So for audience, so if you actually like our content, please stay connected with us. So by signing up with to our mailing list on our website, and also to follow our social media channel. So and we also want to hear your feedback. So scan a QR code and send us your feedback so that we can actually know you know what you like, and then how can we can improve. So in the meantime, stay tuned for upcoming events and on our website and social media channel. So we looking forward to see you again. Yeah. Okay. Goodbye to everyone.
Thanks all. Bye. Thanks, Lawrence.
Okay. Bye.